Mary, I'm sorry for taking Andrew from you, but my dress is so cute. You absolutely have to come see it. I'll even share some of my happiness with you.
3 months after the one-sided breakup caused by his cheating, I received a wedding invitation from Emily. There was no way I was going to that wedding. As I picked up the dreadful invitation and was about to tear it up, Nancy stopped me.
I'll go in your place. I'll attend gladly. I won't be celebrating though.
Nancy and Jessica both raised their left eyebrow and the corner of their mouth in matching smirks. I only meant to teach them a little lesson, but after that, Andrew and Emily would end up being tormented by what they believed was a curse. I'm Mary, 25 years old. I moved to the city when I started college, and it's already been 7 years. I'm originally from a super rural town where only 2 buses run a day, one in the morning and one in the evening. The town is nothing but fields and mountains as far as the eye can see, just green everywhere. There were only 8 students in my class in elementary and middle school. On top of that, 3 of them were my sisters, so it was definitely a low stimulation kind of place. Although running into wild boars and snakes on the way to and from school might have been exciting in its own way. Wanting to break free from that countryside, I went against my parents' and teachers' wishes and left for the city to go to college. I'm completely used to city life now, and to my delight, I even have a hot boyfriend.
Hey, how about we go check out our wedding venue sometime?
Yeah, sure. Wait, our wedding? I couldn't hide my confusion at the casual way my boyfriend, Andrew, mentioned it. We've been dating for just under a year. Even though I've already gotten close with his family, the sudden mention of the word wedding made my heart race.
Why are you so surprised? We're just going to one of those bridal fairs. They let you try wedding food for super cheap. Isn't that awesome?
Andrew laughed at my nervous reaction. So it's just about a good deal. I let out a sigh of relief, but the word wedding still seemed to sparkle in my mind. One weekend, when we visited the wedding venue together, the space was even more glamorous than I had imagined. I thought it was way too early to be thinking about marriage, but I couldn't help feeling excited. In the chapel we were shown, we naturally ended up holding hands. Bathed in the light shining through the vibrant stained glass, Andrew and I smiled shyly at each other like a pair of newlyweds. The meal in the lavish hall was amazing too. Since Andrew and I usually only eat out at pubs or casual restaurants, we weren't used to such fancy service. We both straightened our backs, feeling almost like royalty.
This is insane. It's so good.
Even Andrew, who's usually loud, kept his voice down.
This is delicious, but it's kind of stingy to only give us one bite on such a huge plate. Is it because it's a budget event? Do you think we could ask for seconds?
Oh, Andrew, stop it. Don't ask for more. That's embarrassing. Besides, I heard we'll be getting some meat soon, so just hold on.
Yeah.
Andrew reluctantly wiped the sauce off the plate with his finger and licked it. As the beautifully presented dishes kept arriving, I was amazed and delighted by the flavors. While I closed my eyes to savor each bite, Andrew kept enthusiastically exclaiming, "This is awesome!" over and over, like he was drumming to a beat.
This is amazing. Weddings are great.
I felt the same way as Andrew. I enjoyed the dessert cake with happiness. After that dreamy meal, we were met with the individual consultation session, which was more of a hard sell. Andrew and I had already discussed this and decided to politely say we wanted to consider other venues to get through it. The smiling wedding planner sat down in front of us. I swallowed nervously. But before the planner could even speak, Andrew blurted out,
We're getting married here.
With eyes shining, Andrew declared it proudly.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
I was the only one who couldn't keep up with the celebratory mood. Seeing my confusion, Andrew spoke to me firmly.
Mary, let's get married. I've made up my mind. I want to have our wedding here. It'll be the best wedding ever.
It was such a sudden. To snap me out of my indecision, Andrew gave me a big slap on the back.
Don't worry. I love you so much, Mary. There's no one else I'd want to marry but you.
His straightforward proposal made my face burn with embarrassment. Caught up in Andrew's enthusiasm, we made a tentative reservation for the wedding venue right then and there. Andrew is like a wild boar. Once he's set on something, he charges straight ahead. Because of that, he's had quite the roller coaster life. After graduating high school, he was determined to start his own business, but after a few years, all he had left were debts. But even though he lost his money, he gained experience, and now he's more motivated than ever to start another business. I met him by chance at a professional seminar. Andrew was immediately smitten and started pursuing me with full force, which brings us to where we are now. People sometimes say that quiet me and headstrong Andrew don't seem like a good match, but I love how passionate he is. For someone like me, who tends to dwell on little things, Andrew's ability to bounce back no matter what happens seems incredibly cool.
Mary, I'm going to make you the happiest wife in the world.
If I'm being honest, I would have liked a more romantic proposal, but expecting surprises from Andrew isn't realistic. So maybe his proposal at the fancy wedding venue was just right after all. When we told his parents, David and Margaret, about our engagement and the tentative wedding date, David looked concerned.
Who decides something so important on a whim? I'm sorry, Mary. I bet Andrew just made up his mind to get married and wouldn't budge, right?
Parents really do know their kids well. David was absolutely right.
But honestly, I couldn't be happier if he's marrying Mary. Thanks to her, Andrew finally got a job after wandering aimlessly for so long. She turned him into a real man.
Andrew used to have a big dream of becoming rich and hadn't held a steady job, but now he's working hard as an employee. When we first met and he was pursuing me relentlessly, I told him to come back and confess once he had a job. I thought that would be the end of it, but by the next day, he had found one. We shared the news of our engagement with our mutual friends.
Congrats.
The one who reacted the most enthusiastically was our friend, Chris. Chris has bright green hair with shaved lines through his eyebrows. Andrew's attitude is basically his friends are my friends. So now I have a bunch of friends with wild appearances, people I never would have spoken to back in college. To be honest, I used to be scared that someone like Chris would mug me just by making eye contact. But when I actually met them through Andrew, they turned out to be kind and loyal people. I was wrong to judge them based on their looks.
If Mary's going to be his wife, then even that dummy Andrew will be safe. But no more talking about getting rich quick or hitting it big, okay? You've got a family to think about now, so no more drifting around.
Andrew's parents and his friends were all happy for us. Even though Andrew used to worry everyone, he's clearly loved by them all. Andrew's not drifting around anymore, so it's going to be fine. He gave up on his vague dreams for me and now has a steady job with a decent income. I was filled with hope that we would build a lively, happy home together. But that hope was about to be shattered all too easily. As soon as we met up at the cafe, Andrew stuck out his tongue and pressed his palms together in an apologetic gesture.
Sorry, no wedding.
He said it as casually as if he were canceling a dinner plan, and I couldn't process it right away. We were supposed to go visit my family next week to introduce him. What do you mean, no wedding?
Well, it just doesn't feel like what I thought it would.
It was like he was talking about a cheap outfit he bought online. After dating for nearly a year, hearing him say it wasn't what he expected made no sense to me. What's different? We've already paid the deposit for the wedding, and I've even met your parents. When I tried to press him further, Andrew let out a big sigh.
Shut up. You're already acting like my wife, and we're not even married yet. That's exactly what's annoying.
When I clammed up, Andrew got even more talkative, as if he'd won.
When you're quiet, you're cute, but lately all you do is ask me, what about this? Or have you thought about that? You've been nagging me nonstop since we got engaged. You've changed. It's like you tricked me. Thank God I figured out your true colors before it was too late. I don't like girls who pretend to be sweet but are actually controlling. I'm done putting up with you. It's exhausting.
He said I'd been nagging, but I honestly couldn't think of a time I had. Maybe it's because I kept asking him about wedding plans? He'd always just give vague answers, so I might have pushed a bit. But is that really considered nagging? What?
I'm done. I don't love you anymore, so stop following me around.
But. Frustrated with my hesitation, Andrew spat out.
I can't stand clingy women either. Don't turn into my stalker, okay? Because let me tell you, the chances of us getting back together are zero.
He turned his eyes away from me and waved someone over. A woman came running. It was one of Andrew's friends.
I'm actually dating Emily now.
Emily draped herself over Andrew's shoulder. Emily gave me a troubled smile, but there was a hint of condescension in it.
Andrew was saying he was worried you'd turn into a scary wife if you guys got married. I felt so bad for him.
So, he dumped scary me for this fake sweet Emily, right?
I think it's important to keep that lovey-dovey feeling even after getting married. Mary, you completely changed once the wedding was set. That's a deal breaker. But don't worry, I'd never turn into a controlling wife like you. You had a chance at happiness, and you ruined it yourself.
An engagement broken off, and now, cheating right in front of me. I didn't know how to process it all so suddenly. I wanted to cry and scream and cling to Andrew, but that's just not who I am. So I held back my tears, stunned and silent. I hated how I couldn't just express myself.
Well, that's it. Bye.
Just like that, our relationship ended. Since the breakup of my engagement a few weeks ago, I've been staying at my sister's place. My sister, Nancy, has been really supportive, and little by little, I've started to feel better.
You definitely dodged a bullet with that loser. Good thing you didn't marry him.
Totally. I think he just freaked out about being tied down by marriage. All he wants to do is fool around. He's one of those irresponsible guys. At this point, I can casually talk trash about Andrew. However, when I returned to my apartment to collect my mail after a while, I found an unexpected letter waiting for me. I had already been annoyed by mail related to Andrew before, but this was something I could tell would hurt even more. With my heart pounding, I brought the letter back to Nancy's house. I didn't have the courage to open it alone. Our younger sister, Jessica, happened to be visiting, so the three of us gathered around the letter. On the back of the fancy envelope was a name I didn't want to see, Andrew. And it was printed alongside Emily's name too. I already knew exactly what it was without even opening it. Nancy took a deep breath and ripped the envelope open without much care.
Just as I thought, it's a wedding invitation.
Nancy held the invitation by the edges, like it was something filthy. Jessica furrowed her brows and sounded disgusted.
It's only been 3 months since he broke off the engagement with you, and now he's already marrying his affair partner? Unreal.
I stared blankly at the invitation. If things had gone as planned, I would have been sending out my own invitations around this time. A whirlwind of emotions, neither anger nor sadness, swirled inside me. With their faces red with anger, Nancy and Jessica gently rubbed my back. To top it all off, the invitation came with a letter.
Mary, I'm sorry for taking Andrew from you, but my dress is so cute. You absolutely have to come see it. I'll even share some of my happiness with you.
She wrote, sorry, but there wasn't an ounce of real apology in her words. There's no way I'm going to that guy's wedding, I said, laughing through my tears. Nancy looked at me seriously.
You don't have to force yourself to smile, even in front of us. If it hurts, go ahead and cry. It's okay to cry.
The tension I'd been holding in my mouth finally relaxed. I started sobbing like a little kid, and both Nancy and Jessica hugged me tightly. He's marrying Emily so soon after breaking up with me? Is he trying to mess with me or something? They were probably cheating all along. Andrew was a bit reckless, but I liked how he was always so full of energy and pushing me forward. But that was just a misunderstanding. Andrew's just selfish. I'm over it. Completely cured. I'm the one who's done with a cheater like him. I cried and cried, losing track of time. By the time the setting sun's light streamed into the room, the tears had stopped, and so had my bitterness toward Andrew and Emily.
It's good to let out what you're feeling. Do you feel better now?
Yeah, I feel better. Thank you. I was ready to forget Andrew and move on. Just as I picked up the cursed wedding invitation to tear it up, Nancy stopped me.
I'll go in your place.
What? I let the invitation slip from my hand.
I'll attend gladly. I won't be celebrating though.
Nancy and Jessica both raised their left eyebrow and the corner of their mouth in matching smirks. A few months later, the day of Andrew and Emily's wedding arrived. The sky was covered with heavy clouds, and even at midday, it was dim and gloomy, with a humid air that clung uncomfortably to the skin. The perfect weather for their wedding day. The three of us sisters dressed in matching dark gray dresses, helping each other with our hair. Then, Nancy confidently attended the wedding. I hid behind her, quietly watching Andrew and Emily in their wedding glory. Though Jessica wasn't inside the venue, I knew she was out there somewhere, casting her heated gaze at the bride and groom. The reception began, and it seemed Andrew finally noticed Nancy's presence. As everyone stood with their glasses raised for a toast, Andrew pointed at Nancy and laughed. When Emily saw her, she burst out laughing so hard that her shoulders shook. Even though they were seated in the spotlight at the head table, neither of them paid any attention to the toast. They kept pointing at Nancy, looking at each other, and laughing over and over. Andrew, clearly getting more excited, raised his right thumb. Then, shockingly, he brought that thumb to his throat and made a slashing motion. He stuck his tongue out and rolled his eyes back dramatically. It was an act completely inappropriate for a groom, let alone for any human being. Andrew mouthed something playfully. There was no sound, but I could clearly understand what he was saying by reading his lips.
Wow, spooky ghost.
He dangled his hands in front of his face, swaying them back and forth. Then, once again, he mouthed,
I'm haunting you.
Emily found it hysterical, slapping Andrew's shoulder repeatedly as she laughed uncontrollably. While the head table was in a bizarre uproar, most of the guests didn't seem to notice, continuing to listen to the toast. Finally, after what felt like an overly long speech, the toast came to an end. As soon as Nancy sat down, Andrew's expression froze. Emily, who had been laughing moments ago, tightened her grip on Andrew's arm. It seemed like they both noticed me once everyone else sat down. I was sitting quietly in the chair right next to Nancy, saying nothing. The two of them, who had been joking around, now looked back and forth between Nancy and me, their faces gradually paling. During the reception, friends gathered around the bride and groom. Nancy and I also approached the head table, lowering ourselves slightly to get close to Andrew and Emily.
Smile.
Someone called out, but Andrew and Emily's faces only twitched.
Hey, isn't that Mary?
Andrew started cautiously. The lively atmosphere around the head table went dead silent, as if it had been a lie. Their friends all lowered their eyes, shadows falling over their faces. The first to speak was Chris, his voice heavy.
I don't even want to think about what happened back then.
Some of their friends covered their mouths, some cradled their heads, while others wiped their eyes with handkerchiefs.
I've explained it before. That day, Mary was.
Chris's voice cracked, but he continued.
She was lying there, pale as a ghost, on that cold floor. No matter how much I called her name, she didn't respond at all. And then, that disgusting room, the stench of decay. Just thinking about it makes me sick.
Enough.
Andrew hastily interrupted.
Andrew, Emily, your happiness comes at the cost of Mary's suffering. Never forget that.
Breathing heavily, Andrew pointed at me. I was smiling calmly next to him.
This is Mary, right?
Andrew's voice cracked and trembled. The hand he was pointing at me with was shaking exaggeratedly, moving up and down by at least 8 inches. To Andrew and Emily, I must have looked like a ghost.
Mary? I don't know.
Their friends tilted their heads in confusion. It wasn't an act. They genuinely didn't recognize me. Nancy placed a hand on Emily's shoulder and leaned in to peer at her face. Nancy and I looked so alike that you couldn't tell us apart when we stood next to each other. Andrew and Emily were utterly terrified, their shoulders hunched up, bloodshot eyes wide, and their gums showing in fear. Their already pale faces turned ghostly white. I gently placed my hand on Andrew's cheek and whispered into his ear, "I'm haunting you."
I'm sorry.
Andrew, still seated, leaped straight up in the air. "When did you start betraying me?"
From the beginning of our relationship, I started dating you because I liked your looks, but I was already on and off with Emily before that. We've been together for over 5 years.
Perhaps out of fear, Andrew confessed everything. "So you never intended to marry me from the start?"
I did plan to marry you. I thought you'd support me even if I didn't work, but then I realized how exhausting it was being with someone as serious as you, and I figured it was way easier hanging out with someone more laid back like Emily.
Andrew clasped his hands together as if in prayer.
I'm sorry. Please, let me rest in peace.
Tears streaming down his face, Andrew's eyes lost focus. Emily, cradled gently by Nancy, was also a mess, crying so much she couldn't even speak. It seemed like they were on the verge of losing their minds, so I decided it was time to reveal the truth. I'm not going to rest in peace.
I'm sorry. I'll do anything.
There's no need, because I'm still alive.
What?
Andrew let out a pathetic, confused noise. He turned cautiously, looking down at my feet. When he saw that I had legs, He seemed to relax, as if all the strength drained from his body. Finally, Andrew managed to look straight at Nancy, who was still by Emily's side, comforting her.
Mary's ghost? Wait, could it be twins?
Yes, she's my sister. We look exactly alike, don't we? But trust me, I resent you so much. I almost did send my spirit after you.
I'm sorry, but come on, dragging everyone into this, pulling off such a crazy prank. Who does that?
The truth is, no one was lying. Everything Chris said was real. I don't remember much from the days right after the engagement was broken off. Apparently, I had been going to work, but I was barely conscious. Some friends who heard about the breakup came to check on me, and I remember their faces looking as if they'd seen a ghost. Even now, I'm not sure if it was a dream or reality. According to Chris, I was found passed out, my face pale. The room was a mess, with a foul stench and bugs coming from a pot I had left unattended. Given the state I was in, my friends urged me to return to my family's home. But I didn't want to go back to my rural hometown, so I ended up staying with Nancy, who lives in the city. Thanks to the strong support of my sisters, I finally regained my sanity. If Chris and the others hadn't found me, who knows what might have happened. I might have actually turned into a vengeful spirit and haunted Andrew for the rest of his life.
So that's what happened. You were totally broken after I dumped you. Wow, Mary, I didn't realize you were that mentally weak.
Andrew laughed through his nose, as if trying to erase the memory of my vulnerable state. You only saw ghosts and spirits because you felt guilty. Do you realize now how awful what you did really was?
Well, yeah, I guess I was kind of in the wrong. But I broke up with you properly and even said sorry. Isn't that enough?
Andrew grumbled, clearly unsatisfied. Now, I couldn't understand what had attracted me to him in the first place. Sorry isn't going to cut it. Right after we broke up, I didn't even have the energy to hold you accountable. But now, you and Emily are going to pay for what you did. You cheated and broke off our engagement one-sidedly. I'm going to get every bit of compensation I can. Get ready. Andrew and Emily exchanged nervous glances, trembling. A real punishment is much scarier than any ghost could ever be. Looking around, I could see that everyone else was glaring at them with disapproval. Even his parents, David and Margaret, weren't an exception.
Dad, Mom, why are you looking at me like that? Don't tell me you were in on Mary's plan too?
David and Margaret's stern expressions didn't change. Of course, they knew about the plan. In fact, it was David who suggested giving Andrew and Emily a dose of reality on their big day, knowing they were too wrapped up in their wedding excitement. They respected my feelings more than their own sons, even though I wasn't officially part of the family yet. Sure, the wedding would go on as planned, but with a different bride? That must have been too much for David and Margaret to accept, despite how much they cared for me. They hadn't blessed the marriage, but they'd kept their silence up until today. It was clear that their long-held anger had reached its peak now.
You idiot son. Do you think a man who throws away his partner like trash can ever be happy? You didn't just abandon Mary. No, you're the one being abandoned by Mary, by your parents, by your friends, by everyone. And hey, you, the bride with your head down. You're no different. No one's blessing this marriage either.
Though no one had hit him, Andrew clutched his head in pain, his face twisted in agony. Emily, who had her shoulders hunched and eyes tightly shut, opened them just a little. The moment she did, she was met with cold, piercing stares. The air was thick with negative emotions, making it hard to even breathe. Desperately, Emily looked around for her parents. They seemed to be in such shock that they were nearly unconscious, barely holding on.
That's not true. Everyone said congratulations.
Nancy whispered softly to the pitiful Emily.
I clapped and said congratulations too. You two are perfect for each other, two fools. Oh yes, what a joyous occasion. I'm so happy that my precious Mary didn't end up with a worthless man like him.
Emily closed her eyes again and slapped her cheeks, as if trying to convince herself that this was all just a dream.
I'm glad I'm not marrying someone who would do something like this just to get back at me for cheating. Compensation for cheating? Fine, take it. I only dated Mary for a year, and we weren't even married. It's not like it's going to be that much money.
Andrew's bravado was desperate.
I hate people who work too seriously. It just means you're obsessed with money, right? Mary, you're only doing this for the compensation, aren't you? You just want money, right?
I remembered how I used to admire Andrew's mental strength, how he would never give up no matter how many times he was knocked down. It wasn't a bad trait, but now I wondered why he couldn't just read the room a little better. You're the ones who love money, not me. Honestly, it's not like everyone would have rallied to my side just because my fiancé cheated on me. He must have done something far worse, which is why he's surrounded by enemies now. You took out a loan pretending to be me, didn't you?
No way. I don't know what you're talking about.
Andrew raised his voice in anger. The way he snapped so quickly made it clear that I had hit the truth. You stole my ID and used it to take out a loan. I found out after we broke up, when the debt collection letters started coming to my house. Up until now, it seems you've been paying it back, so I never got any notices. Maybe they ran out of money because the wedding was expensive. Or maybe they just got too caught up in the excitement and forgot. Either way, they stopped paying. They're cunning, but not smart enough to cover their tracks for long. At least I found out about their schemes early on and saved myself.
I don't know what you're talking about.
No matter how much he yelled, I wasn't afraid, because I had people on my side. Ignoring the frantic Andrew, I turned to speak to Emily, who had curled up in silence. Emily, I remember you once bragging about how you dyed your hair black and dressed up like a boring person just for fun. Was that when you pretended to be me and took out a loan from a consumer finance company? Emily, in her figurative bed of nails, kept her eyes shut tight, desperately trying to escape reality. Nancy, still playing her ghostly role, leaned close to Emily's ear and whispered, her breath barely audible.
It's too late to regret anything now. We know you two conspired and committed a crime. You can't run. We won't let you.
For some reason, Nancy didn't break her ghostly character. A shudder ran from Emily's legs up to her head. Tears smudged her heavily made-up face, and her cheeks were streaked with dark, dirty trails of mascara. Emily, how long are you going to keep crying? We're the ones who should be crying here. After looking into it, we found out you didn't just steal money from me. You were also using the credit cards and debit cards of the friends here without their permission. It turned out that my friends were victims too. Once Andrew and Emily realized how easy it was to take out loans under my name, they got cocky and started borrowing friends' cards here and there when they hung out. My friends probably never suspected that Andrew and Emily were watching them during ATM withdrawals or card transactions. If the amounts stolen were small, like a few $100s, it was easy to miss.
You dragged my closest friends into this. Unbelievable.
Andrew clenched his fists tightly. He looked like he wanted to lash out at me with hurtful words. But he couldn't because he knew he was in the wrong. His mouth moved silently in frustration. Friends? So you and Emily thought it was okay to steal money from your so-called friends? Oh, I get it. They were important to you because they were a source of cash, right? Nancy slid her arms around Emily's shoulders from behind, holding her gently.
Emily, why are you shaking so much? You don't seem like the bold criminal who committed such daring fraud. Is this all fake crying? Crying won't save you now.
Nancy's smile, tormenting Emily's spirit without causing her any physical harm, made her look like a villain. It was strange how her usual gentle smile now felt so terrifying. Whether Nancy was a person or a ghost didn't matter. Emily could only feel pure fear. But I didn't feel an ounce of pity for her.
Money. Is that all you people care about? Fine, I'll pay it back. That's all you want, right?
Andrew shouted in a tearful voice. How long was he going to keep pretending to be tough? At this point, the atmosphere was so tense that continuing the reception was impossible, and the host quickly called it off. David and Margaret apologized to the guests and urged Andrew to do the same.
I said I'll pay back the money. Why should I apologize?
Even someone like me, who'd never been in a major fight, felt my fists clench in anger. But remembering that Nancy and Jessica were there, I took a deep breath and calmed myself down. Despite their tough-looking appearances, none of my friends raised a hand in violence. Andrew and Emily should be grateful that their tear-stained wedding didn't turn into something much bloodier. Later, Andrew and Emily called me and our friends together and, to our surprise, actually paid back the money they owed. With a grin on their faces, completely different from the tearful expressions they wore at the wedding, they shoved the money at us.
Is this enough for you? You money-loving people.
It was clear they weren't doing this out of remorse, just trying to save face. Still, if they were offering to pay us back, we'd take it. Andrew fanned himself with a stack of bills.
You guys were so noisy about it, so I borrowed this from a loan company. Look, here's your lump sum repayment. Seriously, you're all making a big deal over just a couple $100.
Well, I did take out a bigger loan in Mary's name, so that amount is larger. But don't worry, I've repaid your debts too. Now everything's settled. So stop whining already.
The arrogance in his tone was infuriating.
This is all your fault in the first place.
How's that?
Because you told me to get a job.
Wait. If you had a job, you'd have an income. Why would you need to take out loans? Andrew smirked.
Oh, I guess you didn't figure it out yet. You're pretty clueless, Mary. I never actually worked. I got a job just to keep dating you, but I quit after the first month.
Since he was living at home, Andrew only needed money to fund his fun, so he covered that with loans. He'd been juggling debt, but when he started falling behind on payments and lenders stopped giving him money, he resorted to stealing from my wallet. Then, when he saw my ID and insurance card, he figured out there was an even better way than taking a few $100s here and there. Suddenly, a question crossed my mind. So, are you still unemployed? How were you even able to take out loans then?
That's easy. You just tell them you have a job, and I used Chris's company name. Thanks, man. Mary, you're too straight-laced to understand. I've got real street smarts, you know. It's what sets me apart.
I see.
Chris, who had overheard this, responded without anger. He's the CEO of his own company, after all. His hair might be green, but he's still a solid business owner.
Emily, let's take the leftover money and go get some steak. Earning money is way too easy. I could never work a regular jobs like Mary. It'd piss me off to have someone telling me what to do.
So, are you thinking of starting a business again? If Chris can do it, you could totally pull it off too, Andrew.
Yeah, maybe I'll be a CEO again.
Andrew puffed out his chest and laughed, throwing his head back dramatically. Chris, standing tall, looked down at Andrew and said,
You'll never pull it off.
What? Yes, I will.
Chris gave me a knowing glance. It was time to bring some reality to his carefree world. No, you won't. How are you going to start a business from prison? Taking out loans under someone else's name, stealing credit cards and debit cards. Even if they paid the money back, that didn't erase the crime. I've already reported everything to the police. You won't be getting off without consequences.
The police? Isn't that a bit much?
You're mad at us for reporting your scams, even after you returned the money?
I was shocked to hear Andrew and Emily act like they were the ones being wrong. The police will be coming for you soon. You can't run from this. Both their faces twisted with anger and anxiety. At that moment, Chris, always the gentle one, tried to calm the tension by pulling something out.
By the way, I made a photo album from your wedding. The first half was still decent, so here's my gift to you.
Andrew, grumbling, took the elegant album from Chris. Seeing a picture of herself in a beautiful wedding dress on the cover, Emily's anger momentarily eased as she started flipping through the pages. The bride and groom gazed at each other in a lovely chapel overlooking a beautiful garden, while the guests applauded enthusiastically. It was a heartwarming photo, but Andrew and Emily's faces grew tense.
Is that her?
Why is she there?
Emily pointed at the image of me and Nancy among the guests. Then, Andrew hesitantly pointed toward the garden. His trembling finger indicated another version of me standing there.
What's going on? There are 3 Marys.
Mary and the twin? And who's that?
Unable to take it any longer, Andrew threw the album across the room.
What's this? I went through all the trouble of making that album, and you won't even look at it? Come on, let's check out the next page.
Chris casually flipped the page. On the next page, and again on the following one, Andrew and Emily found the third version of me, expressionless and staring directly into the camera, and they shuddered in fear.
What is this? There are 3 of you in these pictures.
What are you talking about? I'm the only me in this world. They exchanged puzzled looks and shrugged. But it's true. There's only one of me. Even if I weren't a twin but a triplet, with 3 identical versions of myself, each one would still be an irreplaceable original. I haven't lied about anything. While maintaining a curious expression, I stuck out my tongue in my mind. Andrew and Emily's faces rapidly turned pale. They looked at each other, their legs trembling uncontrollably.
Cut it out. Are you trying to curse us? We're sorry, okay? We gave the money back. Just leave us alone already.
What's wrong? With each step Andrew took backward, I tilted my head and moved closer.
Stop it. Mary, you're still alive. We didn't do anything that bad. I don't even believe in ghosts or spirits.
Despite her words, Emily was clearly terrified. Andrew hesitated as he tried to step on the album, but then grabbed Emily's arm and fled. Not long after, they were caught by the police. In the end, they both received suspended sentences. Even though they had caused all kinds of trouble, Andrew and Emily returned with a smug attitude, acting like being out of prison meant they were basically innocent. However, that bravado quickly crumbled.
Stop it already. Leave me alone.
At first, they barged in angrily, but their energy faded, and they eventually broke down in tears.
We're sorry, okay? Please stop cursing us.
We know we were wrong. Just stop.
It seemed they were being haunted by what they believed was my spirit. It was probably just their guilt making them paranoid. Or maybe it was just me, Nancy, or Jessica passing by, since we lived in the same town. Since we live in the same town, it's not surprising if we cross paths. They started panicking, saying things like someone was peeking into their room or that they always felt like they were being watched. But that was just fear playing tricks on them.
We have to ask the police for protection. No, we'll escape to prison.
By the end, they had completely lost their composure. But even more misfortune awaited them. I heard they had been caught by loan sharks. The money they borrowed to repay our friends came from a shady loan shark. They probably turned to them lightly, since they could no longer borrow from legitimate companies advertised on TV. While it's still just debt, where you borrow it from makes a huge difference in its consequences.
I never should have taken out those loans. Maybe if I hadn't repaid them, I'd be in prison by now instead of stuck in this mess. I wish I could go back in time.
The loan sharks, in their kindness, provided Andrew and Emily with jobs. Andrew's task was simple, just picking up specified items from elderly people. Emily, on the other hand, was given a very different kind of job involving a large bed and guests. Rumor has it that they're both mentally and physically drained, still haunted by strange hallucinations and voices while they work. I'm still living happily in the city with my two sisters. Back when we lived in the countryside, people would make comments because we were rare triplets. I haven't forgotten how friends teased us, and even our grandparents, who were supposed to cherish us, called us bad luck and treated us with disdain. That made me feel like being a triplet was something to be ashamed of. So when introducing myself, I always said I was the middle of three sisters. But thanks to that, we were able to pull off our little revenge on Andrew. Nancy and Jessica, thanks for helping me out with all of this.
We're family, right?
Yeah, we've got each other's backs when things get tough.
In reality, the three of us are different in many ways. Our hobbies, fashion sense, hairstyles, and even makeup are all unique. We're individuals. Sometimes people say, "You look alike," so from now on, I'll proudly respond, "We're triplets,